Hello, my beautiful blossoms, blooms, and buds. I'm Rosebud Reads, and welcome to my book garden. Welcome also to part 5 of Peerless, book 5. We are so close to the end. We have this stream, and then I will be on vacation. So there will be just kind of a different special video. We won't be streaming Thursday. And then next week we actually will be finishing the book. We have 2 more streams after this one. And then we're done with Peerless, which is kind of crazy to think about. My camera is focusing on the background. I guess maybe I should be more centered. But yeah, happy Pride Month, everyone. But yeah, I'm very excited about it. So anyway, this is a chill stream, and what that means is I will be chatting with the lovely book garden, which is actually over here now on my screen, with myself, with the book, occasionally looking things up. That's not everybody's thing, and that is completely okay. I'm kind of tilted, aren't I? But maybe stick around. You might enjoy it. You never know. I mean, you got this far, so just saying. But anyway, this is also a mature stream, which means there are mature things that occur. Occasionally, there will be things that are potentially triggering, and occasionally I will have a little bit of a heads up, but that is not guaranteed, especially since this is my first time reading this series. So if there are things that trigger you, if you are watching this later, you will potentially have a bit more of a heads up because there will be a trigger warning in the title. There will be a significantly less detailed summary of what occurred in the description, and there will also be a timestamp of when said thing occurred. However, if you are watching this live, there's only so much I can do. If you see things starting to get dark, starting to get a little sketchy, potentially maybe just say, hey, I'll watch this later, but just be kind to yourself, be kind to your mental health, do what you got to do. That being said, there are potentially also sexy times coming. This is the last book. We know what Don May does, what Don May is. Hello, Annika. Happy Pride to you as well. And all good about the catching up and not staying for the reading, but definitely thank you for just popping in and saying hey. I do appreciate it. But yes. Hello, Truffle. How are both of you doing? Did you do anything fun this weekend? Anything exciting? Anything new? But yes. I am not sponsored. I don't make anything from this. I do this just because I can and because I want to. I enjoy getting these books out there and having them available to people that maybe don't have that option. It's also just fun for me to do this and to read these books with other people. It's a fun way to read them. It feels like I'm reading with everyone here and makes it just a little more special. A little bit, that little extra bit special. But yes, feeling pretty dead. Hello. Oh, just got back yesterday and slept most of the day. That's right. How was your trip? Oh my gosh, I forgot for a moment. Yeah, how was your trip? And the raffle went well. I watched a concert. The band was streaming live. And yes, this is the China thing. But yes. Finally, just continuing our little, not notifications at the beginning, but little heads up. My brain is not working. It's been a long day. I am not sponsored. I am not fluent. I am not sponsored either. Maybe one day, but that means that I will occasionally pronounce things incorrectly or a bit strangely or stumble over my words. I will also occasionally look something up, either to see like an image of it or just to clarify, hey, am I thinking this thing is what this thing is? And sharing that knowledge with everyone, because it's never a bad day to learn. But yes. Yeah, I'm kind of waiting for a little bit of the answer from Annika. Yes, it was amazing. It was my first time in China, and I already want to go back. LOL. Japan was also amazing. It was my first time traveling solo in Japan, and it went so much better than I'd hoped. Mad with Powers this weekend, so I'm excited about that. The host band streams it free. That's both of you. That's amazing. No, I hope you you share some pictures or just stories, Annika, when you are here or have more time or once you get caught up. But yeah, I didn't even get that lost. I've always wanted, I didn't even get lost that much in the train station. That's an accomplishment. I've always wanted to go to both those countries. But yeah, now, I'm glad you had such a great time. Go through all my pictures and post them. Good. I look forward to seeing them. But yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything else to add. Now, I don't think there is. I think, honestly, we've gone through our little notifications at the beginning. I will reiterate that we will not be live streaming Thursday. There is a premiere. I kind of showed off in a different style. I've rearranged the camera so I can show off some of my officially licensed Modao Zushi cards, which it's very low key, just like this, as if I was streaming it unedited. But all that, yeah. Now, the tips about not drinking the water and bring your own toilet paper were spot on. Those were two of the first things our tour guide told us. No, it's a thing. That's why in anime sometimes you see them passing out tissues. It's like, it's not because they've got runny noses. It's because they don't have toilet paper in the bathrooms. My little sis is trying to move to Shanghai, and the rest of the family should get their passports soon. Shanghai was super cool when I went there. It was so cool. So, I hope you get to visit soon, or just visit eventually, Truffle. It's an amazing city. But yeah. So I hope you enjoy the video. I kind of didn't know what to do, and this trip was a little bit last minute, so I didn't have time to ask permission from fanfic writers and get a whole setup for a story like I've done before when I went on vacation or had a holiday. So I hope it works. It was just something fun because I don't like not having something there. But yes. And yes, the drinking water is always a problem. For living, I'd like a nice town by a lake. Yeah, that sounds very picturesque. You and Wei Wuxian. No. So, I should be back on time on Tuesday. If it's like 8:15 and you don't hear anything, check the community page if there's some delays. If it looks like I'll be able to stream regularly, hopefully it should. I should be getting back in from out of town that Tuesday and should be home and set up everything just fine. But if not, I might just stream Wednesday. I don't see that happening, but we'll play it by ear. I'm playing a little fast and loose with the schedule right now. Asen was amazing. My Zuzzy, there's a picture in the community of the Zuzzy Lang. I had so much fun. The community was amazing. And it's one of my absolute favorite cons. It was my first con ever. And so it's a very special convention to me. it's also just a really good convention. It feels a lot more like how they used to feel, a lot more homegrown, lot more like honest. I don't know if that makes sense, but it feels like it used to. And a lot of the other cons are becoming a lot more commercialized and streamlined and mainstream. And not saying that Anime Central's a mess, but it just has that ye old convention feeling. And I like that. I also got to meet some other people from the Danmei community. There was a mom and her two kids that had watched The Untamed. They were very realistic Lamwanji and enthusiastic Wei Wuxian, and it was adorable. They were hilarious during the photo shoot. And it was just adorable. It was really cute. But yeah. Really want to go next year. The Danmei meetups are always amazing. Yeah, no. They were fun. I dropped my pen. And it has been eaten by the floor. Like it usually is. Well, that's why I have like just a bucket full of pens over here. So when the floor eats it, it's not a problem. Yeah, no. One of them was the Lamwanji just kept going into like no pose. The Wei Wuxian just kept pretending to be dead. Why do I think the Chinese historical dramas are so popular? I think one, definitely the costumes are gorgeous. Like the people are usually very pretty. The costumes are gorgeous, so you have the aesthetic reason. The storytelling is usually fantastic. Like they're very dramatic. And so they draw you in. They're usually based around some sort of mystery or plot, which is entertaining. It draws you in, kind of makes you part of the mystery. I've also found that Chinese dramas, even just like not even Chinese historical dramas, not even ancient Chinese dramas, they sometimes have better plot twists than you would expect. Like some of them are super cheesy, you pick up on it, but there's usually a plot twist somewhere in the story that you don't expect, even if the rest is very stereotypical. They love doing that, and it makes it more enthralling, to me at least. I also just find the sense of humor in the ones that are a little more lighthearted. I've found that Chinese or Asian senses of humor and comedy are a lot more slapstick than you would expect. And it makes it really funny because when you look at the rest of their culture, they're so serious about so many other things. But then when it comes to comedy, they're ridiculous. Like they're so out there and so outrageous and so over the top with it that it's such a dynamic flip that it's fascinating to me. I think it's a combination of things, but personally, that's one of the parts that draws me back. Also, they're really good at writing romance. Like, they sucker me in a lot of the times. It's focusing on my background again, and it's annoying me. Yeah. No, they have a very high ability to make characters likable even when there's a villain. They also do that, or opposite that, to make you hate the character viscerally. because they make them an absolute scumbag, and they're very good at that. But yeah. The joke about being made of wood and Veil of Shadows, I nearly threw something at my computer. No, I think part of it too is just learning about another culture. For me, I think it's a lot of fun to do that through what they're producing via entertainment. It's the same thing like reading about ancient civilizations via their fairy tales. You can learn a lot about a culture based on what they view as entertainment. Think about the gladiators. That was their entertainment and sport, and as well as punishment. And the men that fought there kind of were like the superstars when they weren't the other guy that was being killed. Like, so it's one of those where you see what the ideal man, ideal woman is from the storybooks. What's the cautionary tale? What's the lesson being learned and taught? So I think it's interesting to see, because a lot of the ancient dramas also have that I live for my love or I die for my love, and those strong values, because Asian culture does have a lot of very strong values. So it comes through. But yeah, that's my point of view on it. Just a few points. I probably missed some, but they definitely contribute to why I believe that like especially the ancient dramas are so popular. Yeah. I hope that answered your question. I feel like I rambled a little bit, but that's okay. Why do you think ancient all right, Chinese historical dramas are so popular? I'm interested to hear that. While you do that, I'm gonna oh good. I'm glad it made sense. I'm gonna find where we should start. Okay. Definitely some good points. Like to get more into dramas when I have time. Yes. One that is surprisingly not Danmei. I think it's like Love Between Demon and Fairy, I think it's called. I have the book. I have not read it yet, but I've heard good things. Okay. So, I'm going to mark down when we're starting the recount. Love of Fairy and Devil. There you go. It's one of my on the lists of things to watch sort of things. Recap. Lead actor of that drama has a new drama coming out. Ooh. Nice. Okay. I think I've found the spot where we shall start. Enjoy reading tonight and have a great vacation. I'm going to go back to unpacking. Absolutely. You do that, Annika, and I hope we'll see you for Copper Coins, if not sooner. Yeah, so Copper Coins starts which day? Let me double check. Copper Coins starts the 16th. So it's about a Wei Wuxian-ish character saying just screw it and trying to farm. I need to watch that one then, because I love the farming ones. I think they're fascinating. I love farming in another world and the campfire cooking anime. Good night. Okay. One second. Okay. Copper coins, that'll be fun, and good night. And everyone keeps trying to drag him back into the Jianghu spats. You'll have to drop the name to that truffle, and if you know it, the date when it releases, because I will definitely keep an eye out for that. Is that like on Netflix, or what are we talking? I'll write that down. Write that down. Write that down. Okay. Okay. Let's see. Oh, okay. Timing 21. Surely on YouTube, so I don't know where it's airing. That's fair. If you remember or it comes up or anything, feel free to just like post it in the chat or later if you remember in one of the further videos. Just pop it in and we'll go from there. Okay, so last time we had Feng Xiao being framed for killing or attacking the princes and going crazy and hurting people. And Chu Chu was not happy about that. Live long and prosper. How very Star Trek. Thank you, Truffle. And thank you, Google. But yes. So they're figuring out what's going on, and Zhang Sun summoned a few trusted attendants of the Prince of Qin and his wife and asked after the whereabouts of the bowl of deer blood. So they're figuring there was something wrong with this blood that made people go crazy, just like I'm going crazy with this focusing on my background. We're just going to have a lot more of my face in the camera tonight. It's fine. The princess consort's personal maid had perished in the incident. They couldn't extract a testimony from her. Almost everyone else was completely clueless, shaking their heads in bewilderment. Finally, a cook stepped forward. Yesterday, a guard brought deer blood to the back kitchen and asked me to heat it up for him, she said. Are you sure it was deer blood? Oh, she's got a deep voice, asked Zhang Sun. The cook's voice was clear and bright. She dealt with all sorts in the market over the years and was braver than most. Her words came fluidly, without any stammer. That's right. I said it'd stink if he drank it as it was. It'd be better to turn it into a paste. The guard said there wasn't any time for that. The prince wanted to drink it right away. Zhang Sun invited the cook to view the corpses and asked her to identify the guard. Before long, she pointed to him. That's him. It was one of the two men the maid claimed had gone mad. A sword had left a fatal slice across his back. His eyes were wide open in death, and veins protruded from his forehead. His face was so horrific it was hard to look upon for long. But if the deer blood really had contained a gyue, how had the bowl of yang-enhancing soup meant for the Prince of Qin ended up in the stomachs of two guards? This man had gone berserk, then died from a blade to the back. Who had been behind him to strike the killing blow? This was a question no one could answer. Even the maid who'd witnessed the guards begin their killing spree had lost consciousness during the chaos. Zhang Sun had reached a dead end. He sighed, his breath a plume of white in the cold air, and looked instinctively toward the imperial palace. Chu had gone into the palace not to see Empress Dugu, but the emperor himself. Oh, it's too bright. Yang Jian's face was lined with fatigue. He'd yet to sleep despite the late hour. No one would be in good spirits under such conditions. Earlier in the evening, the Prince of Qin had entered the palace to invite his father to celebrate Lantern's festival with him. The invitation was only symbolic, a way to demonstrate his filial piety. Any rational emperor knew better than to visit his subject's home in the middle of the night, even if that subject was his own son. The Prince of Qin had known his father would decline, and it was a good thing he had. If the emperor had been a little less cautious, he himself might have been one of the casualties tonight. And I also love an unflappable cook. Along with Chu, the hall contained an imperial physician who was currently reporting to the emperor on the injuries of several of the noble victims. The crown prince's consort had suffered the worst. She died at the scene before anyone could help her. Her body had not been brought into the palace, but remained at the Prince of Qin's residence. Suspicious. Second worst was the Prince of Qin, who'd struck his head against a pillar and lost a large amount of blood. He'd yet to regain consciousness. The Crown Prince and the Prince of Jin were somewhat better off. The former had an injured arm and the latter 2 broken ribs, but they were at least alert. Their accounts matched that of the majority of witnesses in the guest hall. Feng Xiao had burst in and gone on a killing spree. With the emperor's permission, Chu asked a few questions of his own, but the answers merely confirmed what he'd already been told. The emperor sighed and dismissed the physician with a wave of his hand. He turned to Chu. "You heard everything?" "Your subject heard," said Chu, "but I'd swear on my life that Feng Xiao couldn't have done this." The emperor hadn't wanted to say too much, but before Chu, he couldn't help sharing his thoughts. "I also don't believe it was Feng Xiao. However, once dawn breaks, the city will be in an uproar. Everyone will have their own opinion. When even the Crown Prince and Prince of Jin claim he's the culprit, what am I to do? The Prince of Qin is still unconscious. His life hangs in the balance. If the worst comes to pass, do you think Feng Xiao can clear his name?" Chu is silent for a moment. "I beg your majesty to give me some time to uncover the truth." "Until the Buddhist ceremony," said the emperor. "That's the most I can do." The emperor could delay the trial by claiming bloodshed was inappropriate with the ceremony so near, but postponing it any further was likely impossible. Too many people were involved. Even the emperor had to bow to the will of his court. Chu was a clever man. He didn't need this explained to him. "Then there's something else which I must ask your majesty's permission." By the time Chu left the palace, dawn had broken over the city. He hadn't felt this restless in a long time. Although he was a light sleeper, he was always careful not to overexert himself when it came time to settle down at night. But things were different this time, and not only due to Feng Xiao. The incident at the Prince of Qin's residence was not the end. It was the beginning. A second wave was sure to follow closely behind the first. All they could do was wait for their opponent's next move without any knowledge of what it might be. It was one thing to contend with Xiao Li, but now there was also the Gok Turks to consider. Chu squinted as he stepped out the palace gates. The bright sunlight bounced off the red walls, dazzling his eyes so he could hardly see. A hand at his elbow steadied him. "Lord Chief." Chu turned to see Guan Shanhai looking at him with concern. "I have a suspicion of what it would be." Ooh. I mean, I'm open to you, saying what your suspicion is. You haven't read it, so, I'm totally open to that because it's not spoilers. He'd resented that the Empress had assigned him to the Shuyue Bureau at first, but as time passed, his dissatisfaction faded. While following Chu, he'd witnessed him turn defeat into victory in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. Despite knowing no martial arts, his cunning strategies were always enough to turn the tide. As long as Chubuchu was present, no challenge seemed insurmountable. This was true even now. They were surrounded by a dense fog of confusion. Their next step forward might send them plummeting into the abyss. But when he was behind Chubuchu, Guangshan Hai had the courage to take that step. Much better. The Imperial Guard has assembled and awaits your lordship's command, he replied. Chubuchu vaulted onto his horse. Let's go. The Emperor of Su had gifted the seventh prince a residence worthy of his station. By the time Chubuchu arrived, the main gate of the complex was wide open, as if their hosts had anticipated the arrival of a distinguished guest. The seventh prince sauntered out. On seeing Chubuchu, his initial look of surprise quickly transformed into a smile. Could this be the renowned chief of the Shuyue Bureau, Chubuchu Langjun? You also kind of gotta admire how intricate this plan is. First, the Emperor's family is incapacitated, so he gets worried, and then he forgets to be on the alert. I'm pretty sure the next step is an attempt on the Emperor's life. I mean, I wouldn't doubt it. My suspicion is that the Empress is infected with the Gyu. I don't know if I'd go so far as saying she potentially might attack the Emperor, but I think, like, her life is potentially in danger, like she might die. I don't know all that. I'm getting the vibe that the Empress is in danger. I don't know if I'd say the king or the Emperor, wrong title, but I'm curious to see. I think that's a decent guess. All right. So, 32:15. All right, let's read over our injustices real quick, then we'll get to the new stuff. All right, injustice to service workers is sitting at a hefty 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 44, with justice to service workers sitting at a very sad 5. Our injustice to animals and plants is sitting at a very sad 6, with only a singular justice for animals. Our injustice to innocence is sitting at 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 26, with only a half justice to innocence. Our injustice to Pei Jingzi is sitting at a 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 28, and our injustice to readers is sitting at 4. And finally, our shamelessness counter is sitting at a whopping 105, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 43. 143 counts. Oh boy. Okay. One quick sip and then we start. Chapter 175. Chubuchu had no interest in fame. He preferred to remain behind the scenes, strategizing in the shadows. Being the chief of the Shuyue Bureau came with its own unique privileges, yet before his trip to Liugong City, even Feng Xiao had never met him. Shame, Feng Xiao never met her. Yep. During their journey to the Western Khaganate, however, they destroyed a potential treaty between Ishbara and Appa Khagan, sending Yushiu fleeing with grave injuries and pushing the Western Khaganate to ally with the Su dynasty. Even if Chubuchu had no interest in making a name for himself, his reputation inevitably spread among the Gok Turks. Kuhezhen, the Prince Ishbara Khagan, had sent to Dashing City to pledge allegiance to the Su dynasty, had long admired Chubuchu, and now he finally came face to face with him. Kuhezhen raised a brow, and surprise flickered across his face. He'd heard Chubuchu's health was poor, but he hadn't expected to be quite this bad. Chupachu's complexion was as pale as the white jade Kuhezhen had offered to the Emperor of Su. The first month is cold, Kuhezhen said with genuine concern. Even if you're busy with official duties, you must take care of yourself. This was also Chupachu's first time meeting the seventh prince of the Gok Turks. The prince wore traditional Han garb, his hair gathered in a neat topknot. His dress was no different from anyone on the street in Daxing, and he spoke Chinese with the official accent of the north. If anything, his accent was too precise, to the point that it sounded slightly artificial. His eyes shimmered a soft blue in the sunlight, boundlessly gentle, yet hinting at inscrutable depths within. "Thank you for your concern, Your Highness," said Chupachu. "I've recently been occupied with business outside the capital and only returned a few days ago, or I would have come to pay my respects sooner. I beg Your Highness's forgiveness." Kuhezhen's gaze shifted from Chupachu's face, sweeping over the large contingent of Imperial guards behind him. He laughed. "So, Chief Chu, you came here with this many soldiers to apologize?" His expression was gentle. There was something there beside the ruggedness of a typical Gokturk man. Perhaps he had a little Han heritage. When he smiled, it evoked the delicate willow fronds of Jiangnan as they swayed gracefully in the spring breeze. Chupachu wasn't moved in the slightest. He journeyed through many lands and encountered many Gokturk men and women. Among them were several children of mixed Han and Gokturk heritage, their mothers stolen Han women who bore their captors' children in the Khaganate. These children faced frequent discrimination due to their lineage among the Gokturks. To earn the favor and trust of their peers, they pushed themselves harder than their full-blooded counterparts, and were often far more unscrupulous in their quest to climb the ranks. Yushu was one such child. As for Kuhezhen, Chupachu cupped his hands in greeting, but the gesture was hollow and perfunctory. "The Buddhist ceremony is tomorrow. His Majesty will personally visit Daxing Temple to offer prayers. It's come to my attention that certain individuals with ulterior motives may seek to exploit the occasion. To ensure Your Highness's personal safety and that of the friendship between Su and the Khaganate, I fear I must resort to these crude methods. I hope Your Highness understands." He raised a hand and Guangshanhai whistled. The guards swiftly split themselves into two groups that encircled the seventh prince's residence. I'm sorry if that was really loud. I did it, and then I thought about it, and then it was a bad idea. The many Gokturk attendants and guards who'd accompanied Kuhezhen to the capital rushed forward with expressions of outrage. They rained condemnation down on Chupachu in their native tongue, crying that he was threatening Kuhezhen and trying to incite a war. Chupachu remained expressionless throughout, as if he couldn't understand a word of the Turkic language. In contrast to his subordinates, Kuhezhen remained calm. "Chief Chu," he reasoned patiently, "although I've come to Great Su to serve His Majesty, my people and I are not sheep to be slaughtered. Look how many soldiers you've summoned to my residence. What kind of turmoil would it stir up between our nations if I send a letter back to the Khaganate?" "Your Highness, these guards are only here to protect you from the harm of nefarious individuals," Chupachu replied. "They will depart after tomorrow's ceremony, and Your Highness will once again have your liberty. Your Highness's safety is our highest priority, even if it means you must endure this injustice for a day or two. Surely Your Highness can see how hard this is on His Majesty and the court." He paused and gave Kuhezhen a probing look. "Unless Your Highness has somewhere to be? Some plan that require you to leave?" "You misunderstood, Chief Chu." Kuhezhen's expression was innocent. "I'm merely concerned that after the Buddhist ceremony, you'll find yourself in an awkward position. How will you explain this to His Majesty? What will you tell the cognate? Please don't worry too much for my sake, Your Highness. I've heard many stories about you, Chief Chu, and I hold you in high esteem, said Kuhezhen earnestly. I'd hate to see you backed into a corner. He took a few careful steps forward. Guan Shanhai's hand flew to the hilt of his sword, but before he could step up and block the prince's path, Chupa Chu raised a hand to stop him. Kuhezhen leaned in, enunciating his next words carefully. You've stirred up quite a commotion. Have you thought how you'll resolve it? Does your highness truly believe Xiao Le to be a reliable and trustworthy ally, one that will never betray you? Countered Chuba Chu. Kuhezhen smiled slightly and shook his head. He took a few steps back, then abruptly changed the subject. The weather is rather nice today. Clear skies. Before Chuba Chu could ponder the deeper meaning of this remark, a clamor erupted around them. The once disciplined Imperial guards became agitated, falling out of formation as they whispered among themselves. Even the horses grew restless, shifting anxiously. Their riders grasped for the reins and patted their necks, but failed to soothe their distress. Lord Chief, Guan Shanhai cried, look at the sky! It was the first time Shubuchu had heard that the voice of the steady Guan Shanhai tremble with fear. What could be in the sky? As formidable as Xiao Le and Kuhezhen might have been, they couldn't control the heavens. But Chubuchu too had realized his surroundings were slowly growing dimmer. Did they summon a swarm of Gyu? Are there like locusts coming in? Like, because that's the only thing I could think of that's like darkening the sky is a swarm of locusts. But Chubuchu too had realized his surroundings were slowly growing dimmer. Dawn had broken hours ago. The morning sun should have been bright. But now the shadows around them lengthened as if it were nearing dusk. An eclipse! The celestial dogs are eating the sun! Quick, hide! What should we do? Everyone's faces were slack with panic. The Imperial Guards were no exception, and even the Gokturks around Kuhezhen looked up at the sky with expressions of terror and confusion. Some had already begun to seek places to hide. Guan Shanhai struggled to compose himself and ordered the guards to quiet down. Only Kuhezhen and Chuba Chu maintained their composure. Slowly, Chuba Chu raised his head. The daylight was no longer blinding. The sun was shrouded by darkness, as if truly devoured by a celestial dog. He didn't need to look around to know that the entire capital must be in an uproar both within and without. As stated in the ancient texts, the sun symbolizes the essence of life. It embodies grace, benevolence, and the sovereign himself. When eclipsed, it forecalls a calamity for the emperor. His nation will collapse within 3 years. When a ruler is fickle and volatile, when he recklessly executes innocence and disregards the will of the heavens, the lands, and the divine, he summons the devouring eclipse. These are lines from the Book of Jin, Treatises 2, Volume 12. Throughout history, both in the highest echelons of court and the lowest rural villages, eclipses have always been considered bad omens. The more complete the eclipse, the more dire the state of the nation. The reactions of those around him reflected this. But something was wrong. The grand historian was responsible for astronomical calculations. Eclipses could unsettle a nation, but they were highly predictable. So why hadn't he warned the emperor of this one? Or had the emperor known but not communicated it to Chuba Chu? Chuba Chu quickly dismissed the thought. If the emperor had known, he would have made sure to alert him. He gazed at Kuhezhen, whose eyes curved into a smile. his fathomless blue irises as gentle as water. The look he turned upon Chubuchu was indescribably lovely, as if the chief of the Shuuyui Bureau was someone he'd pledged his heart to and couldn't bear to disappoint. He hadn't said a word, but Chubuchu was certain he had anticipated this. Chubuchu suddenly turned to the guards. "Only a nation without virtue will see the sun and moon lose their light," he cried in a ringing voice. Everyone's eyes went to him. "The southern dynasty has long been marked by ineptitude. The emperors of Chen indulge in hedonism and surround themselves with corrupt ministers and wicked consorts. In contrast, our great Su is revitalized and renewed, with a wise ruler and capable ministers, like the sun rising in the east. One light, one dark. This is a revelation from the heavens. Our great Su will flourish, while southern Chen will fade into obscurity. Wherever our imperial troops march, they shall prevail, surely, crushing all before them." As Chubuchu reached the latter half of his speech, Guang Shanhai discreetly pressed a hand to his back, infusing him with internal energy and ensuring his voice could carry further. His declaration was instantly effective. As they listened, many shook off their confusion. Indeed, the Su dynasty is only 3 years old, they couldn't help but think. Our emperor has reformed the laws, lightened punishments, and amassed men of great talent. These are signs of a new dynasty's vigor and glory. Surely the solar eclipse cannot bode ill for us. If it wasn't referring to them, then it must, as Chubuchu said, refer to the south. Or perhaps it was an indictment of the rapacious ambitions of the Gok Turks right in front of them. There was no need for Chubuchu to go on. As the Imperial Guards gradually calmed, they turned to Kuhezhen and the Gok Turks and nailed them with hostile glares. Compared to the throng of guards before them, Kuhezhen's forces now appeared small and vulnerable. They circled protectively around Kuhezhen, wary of an attack. Surprise flickered across Kuhezhen's face. Not at how the tables had turned, but rather because he knew how terrified the people of the Central Plains were of eclipses. Their fear ran as deep as the Gok Turks when their god's wrath swept over the steeps of the Khaganate. Yet Chubuchu not only remained unaffected, he had managed to immediately stabilize the situation, transforming the guards' fear into animosity toward the Gok Turks. After a moment of astonishment, Kuhezhen burst into laughter. "Chief Chu truly lives up to his reputation. I've been told you're one of the most formidable men in all of Great Su, and now I've seen it for myself." Chubuchu had no interest in engaging any further with Kuhezhen. He ordered Guan Shanhai to tighten the circle around the 7th Prince's residence, then turned his horse back towards Daxing Palace. He was on his way to the palace gates when 2 pieces of news found him on the lips of 2 different people. Oh boy. The first was Qin Miaoyu, who had been ordered to keep an eye on Zhang Yi and ensure he didn't share Liu Feng and Li Mu's fate. But what she'd considered an easy task had gone utterly wrong. Zhang Yi was dead. The second was Ming Yue. He'd gone to the palace to pay his respects. Dome Donut defeated. That was harder to say than it should have been, and I am not proud of myself. I'm actually rather ashamed that I couldn't say that. We are back. I reset it. There we go. His very fox-like face. Very dramatic picture. I agree, Trouble. Okay. 51:45. Let's see. Chapter 176. Yeah, the contrast in that picture are pretty cool. Chapter 176. Zhang Yi was a man who cherished his life. After the sequential deaths of Li Mu and Liu Fang, Zhang Yi would have realized something was wrong no matter how stupid he was. And Zhang Yi was not a stupid man. He took a leave of absence from the court, citing illness, and spent his days at home reading, writing, and caring for his flowers and plants. When the day of the Lantern Festival came, Zhang Yi's family went out to enjoy the lights and festivities. By the time he was growing restless. But by this time, he was growing restless. Okay, I was like, that's not a complete sentence. Several times he'd wanted to go out, only to be persuaded out of it by his family. He resisted the urge to attend the grand evening banquet at the Prince of Qin's residence. Thus, he had missed the scene of carnage that night. Zhang Yi was relieved, but he grew even more cautious about the risk to his own life. After receiving the news, he spent the rest of the night in his study, refusing to come to the door no matter who called him. Qin Miaoyu was uncertain whether Zhang Yi had some connection to their enemy they did not yet know about. Fearing that recklessly revealing herself might alert them, she monitored him in secret. She watched him vigilantly from the shadows with barely any rest, not daring to be lax. Yet despite all her precautions, she had failed. The solar eclipse had shaken the entire capital, and the Zhang residence was no exception. Zhang Yi dashed from the house, his face ashen, as he muttered about needing to see the emperor. Ignoring his family's protests, he ordered a carriage prepared. It was Qin Miaoyu's first time witnessing such a legendary celestial phenomenon, and she was momentarily flustered. She rushed off after Zhang Yi shortly after he boarded the carriage, but the small delay cost her. Zhang Yi's carriage had stopped halfway to the palace. Afterward, the carriage driver reported that his lord had complained of a terrible stomachache. He had ordered the carriage to a halt and stepped out to use the restroom of a tofu shop across the street, lest he embarrass himself upon entering the palace. He went into the building, but never came back out. Oh, don't tell me this dude died on the toilet. Give him a little bit more dignity. Come on. You can't murder a guy on a toilet. Like, I know it happens, but usually it's like to people that are really old. Come on. Don't do him dirty like that. Oh. Oh. I feel like that'd be an injustice to innocence right there. Like, don't kill him on the toilet. When Qin Miaoyu dashed inside to check, she found Zhang Yi dead. He had no external injuries, and he hasn't been examined by a coroner. I couldn't tell if he was poisoned. The Zhang family said he had a pre-existing heart condition. They think the shock of the solar eclipse triggered a heart attack. But it's too much of a coincidence. It was my failure in supervising him that led to Zhang Yi's death. I asked Chief Chu for his punishment. Qin Miaoyu waited, her heart suspended in her chest. That's also true. Also, having an important person dying in your little shop isn't good for business. It's very inauspicious. Okay. Although she wasn't a subordinate of the Shu Yue Bureau, with Feng Xiao imprisoned, she'd been ordered to assist Chu Guchu. He effectively had temporary authority over the Jiajian Bureau. Injustice for the tofu shop! Alright, I'll take that as an injustice to innocence. So it's 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 27. First the solar eclipse, then Zhang Yi's death. Those with ill intentions were stirring up a storm, aggravating the uncertainties of the people and casting doubt on the emperor's rule. The court was engulfed in turmoil as chaos broke out again and again. Even the highest ranks of ministers whispered among themselves, struggling to make sense of these strange events. Since the new year, it had been crisis after crisis without respite. Some, speaking in even more, could ebb away. Another was already crashing over them. All right, I see the warning. I'm going to just preemptively reset. There we go. Before one wave could ebb, another was already crashing over them. Qin Miaoyu had previously scoffed at the claim that usurping the throne was against the will of the heavens. Her conviction began to waver. Such was the power of both rumors and calamities, whether natural or man-made. If even Qin Miaoyu felt this way, then the feeling of the common folk went without saying. Zhu Buchu said nothing. Instead, he looked at Ming Yue, who sighed. My news is more complicated. He'd met the emperor just as the solar eclipse occurred. It wasn't only the common people who'd been thrown into panic and confusion. The entirety of the palace had reacted the same way. But the emperor remained resolute. Despite his anger and fear, his mind had gone to the same question as Zhu Buchu's. Where was the grand historian? He had swiftly sent people to arrest the man for his major dereliction of duty, only to receive the news that the grand historian had died at home. Forecasting a solar eclipse was part of the grand historian's duties. A matter of such importance ought to have been reported to the emperor without delay. Indeed, had the emperor been informed sooner, the court could have made adequate preparations, and the ministers would have been able to devise countermeasures beforehand. I know they're probably about to explain countermeasures, but my part is like, it's an eclipse. How do you prepare counter? Like, unless it's one, like the one where it's like you will literally go blind if you stare up at it, a full eclipse. Like years ago. But like, how do you prepare for an eclipse? The two most important responsibilities of the state were worship and warfare. Yet after the Qin and Han dynasties, the role of the Grand Historian's office in divining the nation's fate had slowly eroded. I know, but I'm just like, the way they stated it, I know it's probably about quelling the panic, but like, it's a funny way to phrase it. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, knowing that it's going to happen would definitely be a start, Truffle. I agree. The role of the office was still important, but most of the time they had little to do. It was an unpopular and neglected department. Apart from the Grand Historian himself, his office consisted of the Deputy Grand Historian, the calendar official, and various other positions. As untimely as his death was, the Grand Historian couldn't have kept something so significant concealed without their cooperation. In fact, it was the calendar official, Li Xin, who was tasked with astronomical observations. His stargazing abilities were exceptional, far beyond even those of the Grand Historian Hong Yuan himself. When the man sent by the emperor came to seize Li Xin for questioning, he was terrified out of his wits. He insisted he'd warned Hong Yuan long ago, but Hong Yuan had said he'd report it in secret. He instructed Li Xin to keep quiet and avoid spreading the word. Li Xin had understood the gravity of the situation and that disclosing the eclipse publicly would be inadvisable. He kept silent and didn't inform anyone. A few days later, Hong Yuan informed him he'd reported the matter to the emperor. Li Xin was relieved. Hong Yuan was his direct supervisor. Li Xin had never questioned that he'd done as he said. Who would have imagined such a thing? Only today, as the capital boiled over with panic, had Li Xin realized Hong Yuan hadn't reported the matter at all. That's got to be a terrible feeling where it's literally your job and you're like, "Oh my gosh, this thing's going to happen." Like you got to go tell the emperor. The person's like, "I got it, but no, you got to keep quiet. Like I will take care of this. Don't say anything, don't spread around." Yep, definitely an injustice to innocence. I agree. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 28. Like, this poor guy. He's just trying to do his job and potentially going to get blamed for it. I hope he doesn't. He instructed Li Xin to keep quiet and avoid spreading the word. Li Xin had understood the gravity of the situation and that disclosing the eclipse publicly would be inadvisable. He kept silent and didn't inform anyone. A few days later, Hong Yuan informed him he'd reported the matter to the emperor. Li Xin was relieved. Hong Yuan was his direct supervisor. Li Xin had never questioned that he'd done as he said. Who would have imagined such a thing? Only today, as the capital boiled over with panic, had Li Xin realized Hong Yuan hadn't reported the matter at all. Ming Yue spilled all the details in a rush, then paused to catch his breath. Hong Yuan had also hung himself at home. The suicide note he'd left stated that he deserved 1,000 deaths for his crimes. He offered his life in atonement and requested the emperor show mercy toward his family. Chubachu raised a brow. His family. The Jijian Bureau, too, specialized in these kinds of investigations. Ming Yue instantly understood what he was asking. His wife passed away many years back, and he has only one son who went missing months ago. Hong Yuan told the neighbors his son left home to seek an education. The grand historian was reclusive by nature and had few friends at court, so this detail went largely unquestioned by those around him. In any case, most people want to avoid being tainted by association. They won't get too close to the officials of the Grand Historian's Department. Everything had happened so quickly, and he'd hurried over as soon as he could. Oh, I bet the son was kidnapped for leverage. I would not doubt it. It seems very likely. Chubachu molded over in silence. Ming Yue and Chun Miaoyu didn't interrupt him. Anyone could see how unfavorable their situation was. The enemy was hiding in the shadows, while Great Su was an enormous target lying entirely in the open. In recent years, the emperor had poured most of his energy into managing the threat posed by the Gokturks to the north. The two sides had engaged in an intermediate back and forth that devolved into open conflict on several occasions. Great Su had paid a steep price to force the Gokturks to surrender, but it was an unprecedented achievement. Even the renowned Emperor Wu of the previous Shou dynasty had been forced to take a Gokturk princess as his empress to demonstrate goodwill. But Great Su hadn't shied from battle, and the Gokturks, realizing they had poor odds of prevailing in a direct confrontation, had turned to more underhanded schemes. Then there was the 13 floors of Yunhai, which had grand ambitions. Xiao Le wasn't from the Su dynasty and had no patriotic feelings toward the nation or its emperor. He had no scruples about collaborating with the Gokturks. It was easy to guard against open conflict and hard to guard against an attack from the shadows. In this case, the enemy had even used celestial phenomena to throw the entire capital into disarray. Hong Yuan was a pawn, one who'd probably been put in place months ago, if not earlier. As astute as Chubuchu was, even he hadn't anticipated the enemy using him in their plans. Oh, hang on just a second. Sorry. One second. Okay. Hung Yuan was a pawn, one who'd probably been put in place months ago, if not earlier. As astute as Chubuchu was, even he hadn't anticipated the enemy using him in their plans. While Hong Yuan was being compromised, Chubuchu had probably been on his way to Liugong City, occupied with secret talks with the Western Khaganate. Xiao Le had planned for the far future. It was no longer a matter of simply finding the right clues or asking the right questions. Their only lead was a dead end. It'd be extraordinarily difficult to uncover the truth before the Buddhist ceremony tomorrow. The ceremony would take place at Da Xingshan Temple. Many in the north were Buddhist, and the temple took its name from the Emperor of Su's title before he descended the throne. After receiving strong support from the court, it had been designated as a national temple. The emperor himself would attend the ceremony tomorrow, so both the inside and outside of the temple had been under strict martial law since the previous day. The monks couldn't leave without the abbot's order, and the ring of imperial guards surrounding it was as tight as a drum. After the solar eclipse, the temple's defenses had been strengthened yet again. Even a drop of water couldn't slip through. Yet despite all the precautions, Ming Yue and Qin Miaoyu were sure the enemy would take the opportunity to sow more chaos. Tomorrow the victors would be decided, but they still had no idea what form the enemy's attack would take. Chief Chu, Qin Miaoyu blurted, why not persuade the emperor to cancel tomorrow's ceremony? Or send a body double? No, Ming Yue cut in. If the solar eclipse hadn't happened, perhaps we could cancel the ceremony. But now we must proceed, whether it be to soothe the people's fears or to seek atonement from the heavens. Their enemies had likely concocted all their schemes with the goal that the ceremony would proceed. Qin Miaoyu had to admit he was right. Forgive me for being blunt, but could the two lordships explain where and when you think the enemy will make their move tomorrow? It would help us prepare. Except that at least 2 times the 13 floors have used people disguised as monks. You're not wrong, Truffle. You're not wrong. Da Xingshan Temple is sure to be their focus, said Ming Yue. Just a few days ago, Chief Chu informed the emperor that all monks at the temple would undergo a comprehensive investigation. There we go. No one will be permitted to enter the temple without the abbot's personal authorization, and every nook and cranny has been meticulously searched to ensure there are no hidden assassins or explosives. Qin Miaoyu considered this and couldn't think of anything they had overlooked. Very prudent. Chubuchu shook his head. It's not enough. They both looked to him for an explanation, yet all he said was, Ming Yue, I need you to do 2 things for me. Most ordinary people would never set foot in the Ministry of Justice's prison. Those who did were grateful to sit quiet in their cells without being summoned for interrogation or punishment in the sunlight in years. My goodness. You know what? I'm going to finish this and then we're going to... Okay. Feng Xiao sat down to meditate. The less he saw, the less irritated he'd be. Once a martial artist reached a state of complete detachment from both themselves and the surroundings, they could effectively shut out all external stimuli. Feng Xiao intentionally dulled his five senses, choosing to disregard any sights, sounds, or smells. In this state, his body was protected by true qi. Any petty theft attempting to attack him would bring serious misfortune upon themselves unless they possessed martial arts comparable to Shaolu's. Yet just as he finished regulating his breath and qi and emerged from his meditation, a terrible stench hit him, so overwhelming he nearly retched. What the hell happened? All right, I'm going to reset it. That's the end of the chapter. Ay, shit. Shoot. Ay. Okay. So much excitement. Oh boy. The internet's being interesting. I hope we're back. And I don't even have water anymore. Okay. Chapter 177. It's an interesting night tonight, everybody. I apologize for all the interruptions and broken water cups. Okay. Chapter 177. Feng Xiao thought was about to ascend to nirvana. He itched to transform into smoke and vanish from the world. His obsession with cleanliness had begun in childhood. During his martial arts training, his seniors had instructed him to do a handstand against the wall with strength and will. To prevent his palms from touching gravel, he'd taken the finest silk garments from his chest and placed them under his hands, nearly driving his seniors to death in their rage. Now that very same Feng Langjun was trapped in this horrific predicament. His thoughts could be expressed in several ways. 2 syllables. Vomit. 3 syllables. Disgusting. 4 syllables. I'll murder them. 5 syllables. I'd rather be dead. Good. Feng Xiao would rather have been attacked by Tuan Qinghe, Shaolu, and Yu Xiu all at the same time than stay where he was a second longer, suffer this assault on his nose. I'm glad we're back, Truffle. The 2 guards next door lugged the last chamber pot into place. They, too, felt like they were about to vomit. Their faces were wrapped in thick layers of cloth, yet they were unable to escape the foul odor assaulting their nostrils. Fortunately, the weather was still cool. It's okay, Truffle. If they'd been in the sweltering heat of summer, it would have been a true hell on earth. They exchanged a silent glance, and in perfect synchronicity, they turned and fled for their lives. I picked up what you were saying, Truffle. They pelted frantically down the hall until they reached the door. Only then did they finally let out the breath they'd been holding. Hey, considering who that guy is, aren't you afraid he'll come after us once he gets out? The first guard gasped, removing the cloth from his face as he huffed and puffed. Don't worry, by then we won't be in this hellhole anymore, the second guard chuckled. I'm surprised he isn't cursing. Yeah, that's a fair point. The words had scarcely left his mouth when a sinister voice came from behind. Oh, I see. Do the 2 of you have somewhere better to be? Do share. The guard jolted in fear. He slowly turned his head. An extraordinarily handsome face came into view. Had he seen such a good-looking man on the street, the guard would have given him a few more glances. But now his complexion turned ashen, and he forced a ghastly smile. Deputy Chief Fang! Each cell in the Ministry of Justice's prison was secured with 3 heavy locks crafted by the royal locksmiths. Even the most crafty and notorious criminals were unable to escape. Yet Feng Xiao had broken free as if it was child's play. The guard quickly gathered himself and fell to his knees with a thud. Forgive us, Deputy Chief Fang. We had a surplus of chamber pots in the prison and nowhere to put them. The cells next to yours were both empty, so my humble self thought to store them there for a short time. I saw your lordship meditating, so I didn't dare disturb you. I'll remove them right away! Right away! Quite clever of you not to implicate Chu, Feng Xiao sneered. In that case, you can go crying to him after I beat you up. The guard was speechless. Feng Xiao suddenly smiled. I'm afraid I must be going. Since you were so eager to drive me away, I'll grant your wish. He took a step toward the door. The terrified guards didn't dare stand in his way. All they could do was plead desperately. I have elderly parents and young children to care for, the first guard cried. Please, Deputy Chief Fang, show some mercy. I'll clean the chamber pots immediately, and I'll replace them with fresh flowers. Your cell will smell sweet and wonderful, and your lordship will feel right at home. Please don't go, Deputy Chief Fang. The 2 guards were on the verge of clinging to Feng Xiao's legs in tears. You don't want to be blamed for my escape? Asked Feng Xiao. The guards nodded fervently. Come, I'll show you how to avoid blame. Feng Xiao beckoned them closer. The 2 guards crept forward, ears perked up attentively, only to feel their bodies suddenly go numb. They were rendered motionless, unable to utter a sound, as Feng Xiao grabbed each of them by the neck and dragged them back into the depths of the prison. Oh, he's gonna leave them in the poop room. He tossed them into the cells where they'd left the chamber pots. With their acupoints sealed, they'd be forced to lie amid the unwashed pots and enjoy the stench until someone came to relieve them in a few hours. By that time, their noses would probably have lost the ability to distinguish anything. I mean, it is kind of their own fault, but that's pretty awful. Feng Xiao snorted coldly, turning to leave. He strode through the prison as if out for a leisurely stroll. As he approached the door, he stripped off his filthy outer garments and took down one of the guard uniforms hung on the wall, pursing his lips in disdain as he shrugged it on. That bastard Chu knew his weaknesses far too well. Feng Xiao felt as if his hair, his skin, his every pore was radiating a foul stench. Oh, he's totally locking them in his cell. You know it. He didn't know or care if it was day or night, or if the 13 floors of Yunhai were concocting some new and devastating scheme. At that moment, there was only one thing that mattered to him: finding somewhere to take a bath. He's got priorities, I respect it. Kuhezhen knelt on the ground and stretched out his left wrist. His skin was paler than that of most Gokturks, and after arriving in the Central Plains, he had realized he was fair even compared to the average Han. While those in the Central Plains saw fair skin as a sign of beauty, the Gokturks did not. His pale skin had made him the subject of mockery throughout his childhood and adolescence. Even as a Gokturk prince, his status was precarious. Chuba should absolutely put them up to it. Kuhezhen gripped a dagger in his right hand and heated the blade over the fire. When it glowed red, he dragged the sharp edge across his wrist. Crimson beaded on his fair skin. The blood fought to reach the surface, where it swelled into heavy drops before trickling down in rivulets. He watched it drip, a slight smirk playing at the corners of his lips, as if the act of self-harm was a thrill in itself. I might mark a slight trigger warning there. Just for cutting. Just in case. I think it's just 123. Just in case. The blood ran down into a black clay pot on the table, pooling silently inside. If one were to place this palm-sized pot in the sunlight, they would see its interior teeming with wriggling worms. The worms were long and soft, their squirming bodies encased in a membrane that shimmered gold in the sun. Pei Jingzi and the victims of Yanding Mountain Estate would surely have recognized them as the Yu that had invaded their bodies. As more blood dripped down, the worms writhed faster within the pot, savoring their bloody feast. Kuhezhen's face grew paler and paler, but the smile on his lips widened. A hand seized his, pressing on his acupoint to stop the bleeding. Kuhezhen's smile faded, but he was unable to free himself from the newcomer's grip as they dragged him away from the pot. "To on," Kuhezhen said, shaking him off in fury. "Stay out of my business! Don't ruin my plans!" "I don't want to interfere," said Tu on Qinghe coldly. "But look at yourself. You're barely hanging on as it is. At this rate, you'll waste away before Yanjian perishes." Okay, so I'm going to mark... Yeah, called it. Slight bug warning. Oh, thank you, Boston Baker. Kuhezhen was still kneeling on the ground. He instinctively tried to straighten up to retort, but a spate of dizziness overcame him. He braced himself against the table. "Tomorrow," he licked his lips. "After tomorrow, my plans will come to fruition. Don't get in my way. Chubuchu and his group are a troublesome lot, and Xiao Lu may change his mind at any moment. None of them are trustworthy. Even every move is a risk. Leave Feng Xiao. Oh, but what's the point if you die away? My breath. As long as I have, I destroy my body and my health. As long as my mind is clear, it's enough for me to control the cognate." And I saw another warning. All right, 1 second. And I saw another warning. All right, 1 second. I'm resetting. Come on. Come on. All right. I hope that this is better, that this works. I reset it. I hope it's better, because it's driving, I think, all of us a little bit crazy. But all right. So I'm gonna just restart that paragraph. I'm sorry to the people that listen later, where it's just like 3 whole different things, but like, okay. All right. Kuhezhen was still kneeling on the ground. He instinctively tried to straighten up to retort, but a spate of dizziness overcame him. He braced himself against the table. "Tomorrow," he licked his lips. "After tomorrow, my plan will come to fruition. Don't get in my way. Chubuchu and his group are a troublesome lot, and Xiao Lu may change his mind at any moment. None of them are trustworthy. Every move is a risk. I'll leave Feng Xiao to you. Enjoy a battle with him if you wish." "And then what?" asked Tuan Qinghe. "You'll die?" Didn't you say everyone has looked down on you since childhood, so you want to achieve a great victory? These worms might help you achieve your goal, but what's the point if you die halfway? Kuhezhen smiled. I won't die, Tuan. You were born a winner. You can't understand people like me. Even if I was stranded in the desert, hanging on by a breath, as long as I had a single drop of water, I'd survive. Even if I destroy my body and my health, as long as my mind is clear, it's enough for me to control the cognate. But what's the point? Asked Tuan Chinghe. Couldn't I ask you the same? Kuhezhen countered. What's the point of leaving your mountain to seek out experts in duel? So what if you win? So what if you lose? The path to martial arts is never ending, but the kind of power you seek will lead you down the road of self-destruction. Kuhezhen sneered. What about your Shifu? Didn't Hulagu perish in his never-ending pursuit of martial arts? Human desire is always insatiable. The only difference is in what you desire. Tuan Chinghe fell silent, the muscles of his jaw suddenly tightening in displeasure. If he had more to say on the matter, he kept it to himself. Tuan, Kuhezhen softened his tone, we've known each other since we were children. Although our time together may be brief, you are a dear friend to me. I know you're only worried for me. Once all this is behind us and I've fulfilled my ambitions, I promise to find expert fighters for you to pit your skills against. I'll help you ascend to the pinnacle of martial arts. Your Highness, said Tuan Chinghe, what exactly are you trying to do? I want Yang Jian dead, Kuhezhen said slowly. He still has many sons. Kuhezhen shook his head. His sons are young, and they lack their father's charisma. They don't pose a significant threat. The Yuan clan has long borne a grudge against him over the usurpation, while Princess Tianjin has been pushing father to wage war in the south for years. Once Yang Jian dies, the southern dynasty will be overjoyed. They'll be first to take advantage of the situation. The northern dynasty will be thrown into chaos. If we, the Gokturks, make the most of our opportunities, we can march south and seize great swaths of land, allowing us to unite the eastern and western cognates. By then, you'll have one foot in the grave. My father promised that once I complete this task, he'll grant me the position of Yabgu. Tuan Chinghe didn't answer, but his expression proclaimed his thoughts as clearly as any words. You're so mistrustful, yet you believe him? Kuhezhen's face grew paler, and his lips flushed redder. The sunlight streaming over his features granted him an inexplicable allure. Tuan Chinghe knew Kuhezhen hadn't always been like this, but his body had been eroded by poison and depleted of vital energy. It was a man drained dry. The more potent the poison, the stronger its backlash. This was a universal law. Of course, I'd never place my hopes in anyone else. I've also planted a Gu in my father, Kuhezhen smiled. I have plenty of ways to ensure he keeps his word. And once you're Yabgu, you won't covet the position of Kagan? Kuhezhen shook his head. I haven't thought that far ahead. My experience and reputation aren't enough to convince people, and I can't plant a Gu in everyone. Compared to playing at being the intimidating Gokturk Kagan, perhaps it's wiser for me to pull the strings from the shadows. This is the last time, said Tuan Chinghe firmly. I won't help you again. Kuhezhen sighed. Thank you. Sunset of the 16th day of the first month found Chubachu leaning on a table, head in hand, having surrendered, at least briefly, to sleep. He'd been awake for almost a day and a half since the morning of the Lantern Festival. His endurance was beyond the limits of most ordinary people, but he'd held on through sheer willpower. Until now. He'd only let his guard down a little, intending to sit and organize his thoughts, but had drifted off to sleep instead. Outside, the sky blazed a golden red that slowly gave way to a dazzling purple as light began to bleed from the world. It was difficult to rest comfortably in this position. Chubuchu's brow furrowed slightly in his sleep. He dreamed that Feng Xiao had immobilized all his acupoints, leaving him unable to even blink. He demanded Chubuchu admire his glory and splendor, ordering him to compose a poem before he let him go. Chubuchu was adequate at setting people up, but composing poetry? He'd never learned anything of the sort. Fuming, he cursed at Feng Xiao, who burst into laughter and gave him a shove. He tilted to the side and startled awake. Someone was sitting in front of him. In the dimness, he recognized Zhang Sun Bodhi. "I didn't light a lamp," Zhang Sun Bodhi said. "I didn't want to disturb you." "What happened?" Chubuchu rubbed at his nose. Zhang Sun shook his head. "Nothing important. You can keep resting, just a small matter." "Speak." Feng Xiao broke out of prison. Chubuchu looked back at him in silence. This is the funniest version of taking a test without pants I could think of. Yeah. Fair enough, yeah. Okay. You know what? I know it's just a dream, but I am going to mark down a shamelessness for the dream Feng Xiao. So we're 100, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 44. Shameless. Okay. Chapter 178. I'll mark it. 142. Chapter 178. "Where did he go after breaking out?" asked Chubuchu. "No one knows. The Jijian Bureau hasn't seen him. He walked right out of the Ministry of Justice's own prison, so his escape was impossible to conceal." Yeah, we're going to reach 200 by the end of this. But it's getting close. His Majesty already knows, of course, but the news is being kept under wraps as much as possible. After speaking to the Emperor, Ming Yue took someone else to the prison, then told everyone Feng Xiao had surrendered and returned to his cell. But this was merely a ruse to stop the news from spreading. Everyone involved would know it wasn't the real Feng Xiao. If Deputy Chief Feng had run, he'd never willingly return. Zhang Sun Bodhi expected Chubuchu would explode in rage over Feng Xiao complicating things at such a critical time. But surprisingly, Chubuchu was calm. An odd expression passed over his face, then he nodded his head in acknowledgement. The Buddhist ceremony will be heavily guarded," said Zhang Sun Bodhi. "But if the enemy has an expert like Xiao Le with them, Ming Yue and I might not be enough." Feng Er was an exceptional martial artist and an indescribable ally. Indispensable. I mean, he's also indescribable. Let's be real. If he didn't make an appearance tomorrow, they might be in grave trouble. "If he hasn't shown himself, there's no point in worrying about him," said Chubuchu. "Xiao Le was badly injured in their battle at the tavern and is yet to fully recover. He'll be fighting at only 70 or 80% of his full ability. If you and Ming Yue combine your efforts, it should be enough." Zhang Sun disagreed. "There's still Tuan Qinghe. The Gok Turks have had their sights set on the Central Plains for as long as anyone can remember, but this is the capital. His Majesty is surrounded by many experts. If Tuan Qinghe wishes to attack him, he can't accomplish his goals alone. If we reinforce our defenses too openly, we might drive the enemy to devise even more strategies against us. We'd be wiser to adopt a more passive approach. When the time comes, we'll take appropriate countermeasures. You're saying you wish to use His Majesty as bait? His tone wasn't accusatory. It was just the two of them in the room. No third party would overhear Zhang Sun's question. They were in the open while the enemy lurked in the dark. Even the most fortified armor had a weak point, and their defenses were spread thin over too many places and people. Flaws and vulnerabilities abounded. Luring the enemy in and adapting their tactics in the moment was the best course of action. Slowly, Chubuchu nodded. Zhang Sun was silent for a moment. Understood. I'll summon personnel and make thorough preparations. Chubuchu coughed a few times. Don't be nervous. Many things seem beyond our control, but in reality, the danger is not as great as it seems. What do you mean? The sun had sunk completely below the horizon, and the last remnants of twilight had faded away. Darkness shrouded the city. Chubuchu shivered slightly and pulled his cloak tighter around him. Observing this, Zhang Sun prodded at the flames in the stove. Soon, the room was warm once more. The night of the 16th was unusually chilly. The authorities had reinstated the usual curfew after the incident at the Prince of Qin's residence. In a sharp contrast to the bustling atmosphere of the previous night, a deep silence had settled over the capital. Only faint sounds came from outside the hall, perhaps the soft whisper of falling snow. If not for the trial that awaited them, it would have been a serene night, perfectly suited for peaceful sleep. But Chubuchu was not sleeping. Hello, Esper Lady, how are you doing? What's new? Xiaolu and Kuhezhen must have reached some agreement to work against us, he said calmly. But Xiaolu has no foothold in the Su dynasty. If he wishes to usurp the throne, he must use a puppet, most likely someone close to the emperor. If he wishes to ensure a smooth transition, one of his goals must be to maintain stability. He might not wish to kill His Majesty. Kuhezhen is different. I'm glad you're doing great. He desires chaos in Great Su, the more the better. That's the only way the Gokturks will get the opportunity that they want. His plans require the Emperor's death. Oh no, it's okay. We've been having all kinds of tech issues tonight. Don't you worry, Esper. Really excited about Golden Terrace. I got it today. Very nice. It's super cool. I think I might actually end up buying the newer versions as well, because that was one of the OGs, so it's got a special place in my heart. But yes, his plans require the Emperor's death. We can exploit this conflict between them, Chubuchu concluded. Their disagreement will give us our chance. Zhang Sun sighed, the sound very soft. He had never been someone who sighed. This was the first time Chubuchu had seen him so unsure. I have no confidence, Zhang Sun said, but tomorrow I shall do my utmost. It really is such a good book. Chubuchu offered him a small smile. Zhang Sun, my strategies aren't invincible. Even the strategist Zhu Liang made a misstep on occasion. I have no evidence that my deductions are correct. I, too, can only do my best. His face was flushed faintly pink from the heat of the stove, yet he still appeared alarmingly frail. Zhang Sun thought he looked even paler now than he had the past 2 days. The color on his cheeks failed to add any warmth to his face. Instead, the stove's fire was like a flickering candle, burning up the last dregs of its energy to impart what little life it could to Chubuchu's tired body. Yeah, the way that both the characters in Golden Terrace bicker is hilarious. my wife. Lord Chief, Zhang Xun furrowed his brow. Don't go tomorrow. Let me handle it. You know that's impossible, Chubuchu replied calmly. Zhang Xun Bodhi's lips twitched. He wanted to say something, but ultimately swallowed the words. Chubuchu had always been sickly. Every year he fell ill when winter arrived. But recently he'd been in high spirits and spent little time in bed. To the uninformed observer, he might appear in fairly good health. But Zhang Xun Bodhi knew it wasn't so. In fact, it was the opposite. Chubuchu's current state was highly abnormal. It resembled a terminal surge of energy before death. This is the bearing of a first wife, and the "do they serve pufferfish at this banquet" never failed to amuse me. My personal favorite is my wife well? I do love a good goose scene. But what can I say? That was a pretty good scene. Okay. Chubuchu's current state was highly abnormal. It resembled a terminal surge of energy before death. Oh, I'm glad you like this book. Kenna? Kennedy. Okay. Welcome. I'm enjoying it a lot too. We're so close to the end. The poor army doctors, they do not sign up for that stuff. Very much so. Of course. All right. Chubuchu's current state was highly abnormal. It resembled a terminal surge of energy before death. Absolutely. Kennedy Bach. Welcome. It's exciting that this is your first time joining us. I hope you join us more in the future. We'll be starting Copper Coins soon. I think it's the 16th that we will start a new series. So welcome, and I hope you join us more often. Chubuchu defied fate with his existence. Zhang Xun couldn't bring himself to say those ominous words aloud. The chief's health had always been precarious. Any doctor who examined him would inevitably forecast a limited lifespan, 3 to 5 months, or at best, 3 to 5 years. The blunter ones would go as far as to suggest he get his affairs in order. Oh, would you also like a shout out? Esper Lady, here's your shout out. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you do in the future. Truffle, thank you for being here. I hope you join us more in the future. Thank you, Boston Baker. I hope you join us, and thank you for being here. Anyone else? I see there's someone else that's lurking. Thank you for being here. Chubuchu defied fate with his existence. He'd been this way as long as Zhang Xun had known him, dragging along his ailing body yet never collapsing. Over time, everyone had developed a kind of delusion that Chubuchu would never stumble or die. I did not want to shout it. I was agreeing that I also like the book. You're fine. Thank you for this. Looking forward to the next one. Of course. I'm grateful everybody's here. It makes it so much more special and more fun. But a delusion is just that. A failing body couldn't suddenly restore itself to full health. Chubuchu exhausting his strength like this would only burn down the candle quicker. At this moment, he seemed fine, but in truth, he'd reached the limits of his endurance. He was like a lamp running low on oil, slowly growing dim. Zhang Xun Bodhi knew all the Buddhist scriptures by heart, but he struggled to comfort others. Prattling on was not in his nature, so all he could say was, "Don't push yourself. Remember, you still have us." Aw. Chubuchu seemed to sense Zhang Xun's thoughts. He patted his shoulder. Don't worry, I can hold on. At the very least, he would last through tomorrow's ordeal. That's not foreshadowing at all. As night fell, what had begun as a light flurry of snow turned into great cottony drifts that blanketed the streets. In the princess's residence, the same tranquil hush enveloped the surroundings as the occupants readied themselves for slumber. The banquet that had been originally planned for tonight had been cancelled in the wake of the events of the Lantern Festival. The atmosphere within the palace had grown increasingly tense in the run up to tomorrow's Buddhist ceremony. All the city's nobles and officials were like moles that had smelled the first sign of a storm on the wind. They hunkered quietly down in their burrows, locking their doors and windows. The 3 nights of the Lantern Festival had never been so desolate. But Princess Li Ping had yet to prepare for sleep. Even her hairpin remained in her hair. She sat awake on her bed, agitated in the extreme, as she gazed at the young woman who just entered the room with sorrow in her eyes. Huan Niang, are you still unwilling to let me go? Imagine if we stopped there tonight. Just were like, that's it. Who is Huan Niang? Oh my gosh, Jiang Sai Zhao is such a chaos girl. He really is. Right. $179. Okay. Chapter 179. The young woman wore a long skirt of vivid scarlet. She swept into the room, graceful and poised, a slight smile curving her lips. Everyone in the princess's residence knew this young woman, Duchess Yuan Ying. But Princess Li Ping displayed no hint of familiarity upon seeing her daughter. In fact, her demeanor was exceedingly odd. She reacted as though she was looking at a complete stranger rather than the girl with whom she'd shared countless days and nights. On her face was a mixture of fear, regret, and indescribable sorrow, yet the young lady's smile only brightened. It was a sharp smile, and held more anger than joy. Yes, I believe it is the replacement too, Truffle. Are you so unhappy to see me, mother? No, it's not that, Princess Li Ping stammered. In a bid to ease the tension, she swiftly continued. Huan Niang, you were separated from your mother for over 10 years. Think how fortunate we are to be reunited. So please, can you stop with this treachery? Tears welled in the princess's eyes. She grabbed the girl's hands, her gaze shimmering as she begged. I will plead with your grandparents to grant you a title. A princess's daughter wouldn't normally have one, but your grandparents cherish me. If you wish to be a duchess, they'll make you one, or of an even higher rank than your sister. Won't that do? Oh boy, she got the dead doll eyes. Oh boy. Oh. She got them dead doll eyes. You know it's bad. Can I be a princess? Asked the girl softly. Princess Li Ping froze. The girl smiled. Even if the daughter of a princess receives the title, she can never be a princess herself. Only the emperor's daughters can be a princess. Mother, I was born a princess, so why should I lower myself to be a mere county duchess, a title I'd have to beg for? Huang Niang from the 13 floors. Except they spell it Huan, not Huang. Wonder if that's really the daughter or someone wearing her face. They do have face stealer things in this, so potentially. I think it's her just based on the spite. Princess Li Ping's face went pale. She found herself unable to speak. Mother, Did you know? When I was young, I didn't even know I had a mother. Ashiang and I Ashiang said I was hanging on to life by a single breath. The palace servants placed me in a freshly dug grave. They even started filling it. If he'd come a moment later, I'd have departed this world. But I was tough even then. I insisted on living. I survived and grew up, and now I can stand here before you and speak to you. When Ashiang adopted me, I was very small. I cried every day, and because his family had fallen on hard times, he couldn't afford a wet nurse. He had no idea how to raise me. So he found a female wolf who'd given birth just then to a litter of puppies. I was raised on wolf's milk. And my sister, she was a legitimate princess, my father's only daughter. He must have showered her with love and attention. The girl crouched down and looked up at Princess Li Ping. Her smile had faded. A pure innocence surfaced in its place. She looked completely sincere, like a child seeking answers from her parents. Tears streamed down Princess Li Ping's face. Her lips trembled. I'm sorry. Back then, her father-in-law, Emperor Wu, had deep suspicions about her father and had been on guard against the whole Yang family. Even as princess consort, fear followed Princess Li Ping throughout the palace. When she learned of the death of one of her infants, she'd cried for a while, but hadn't dwelled on it. She'd never considered the possibility that the child might still be alive. All these years, Princess Li Ping had only one blood daughter, Yuan Ying. She cherished the girl as her dearest treasure and was determined to give her the very best of everything. How was she to know she had another daughter wandering lost in the outside world? When Yuan Yihua first came to her, Princess Li Ping could scarcely believe her eyes. She looked exactly like Yuan Ying. There was no need to test her. Her looks were proof enough of their relationship. Yuan Yihua's voice, comportment, even her every smile and frown, they all mirrored those of Yuan Ying. If the two of them stood together and didn't smile or speak, even Princess Li Ping was unable to tell them apart. Yuan Yihua told her mother about the hardships she'd endured over the years. She expressed her desire to remain discreet about her identity, lest her grandfather become suspicious. Princess Li Ping knew her parents were exceedingly careful. If they learned Yuan Yihuan had been living in the outside world all those years, it would be quite the scandal. She agreed to her daughter's request, thinking that she'd come clean to Empress Dugu when the opportunity presented itself. Surely Empress Dugu would come to love Yuan Yihuan too. As for Yuan Ying, she was a simple child. Upon hearing she had a twin sister, she was ecstatic and readily agreed to keep her secret. The princess and her daughters came up with a plan, and Yuan Yihuan and Yuan Ying began to take turns showing up at the princess's residence, each playing the role of the duchess. They continued this way until the day of the Thousand Lantern Banquet, when Yuan Yihuan's overly clever performance aroused Chubachu's suspicions. Chubachu wasn't the type to dismiss his own doubts. He thought carefully about the peculiar behavior of Duchess Yuan that night, and by sifting through the He thought carefully about the peculiar behavior of Duchess Yuan that night, and by shifting through the scattering of clues, had already guessed most of Yuan Yihuan's story. But he had never would have predicted that Xiao Lu's infiltration of the princess's residence had begun so long ago. Princess Li Ping gradually discovered that her long-lost elder daughter was not as naive or gentle as Yuan Ying. The girl harbored a burning ambition. It was she who encouraged the princess to invest in Linlang Pavilion and collect dividends from them each year. The princess's residence received a stipend from the court, and Princess Li Ping owned several properties gifted to her by the emperor. But when Su supplanted Shou much of what had originally belonged to the royal treasury was absorbed by the new regime. While Princess Li Ping had kept her exalted status after her demotion from Empress Dowager to Imperial Princess, her assets had diminished considerably. As the emperor's firstborn daughter, she was expected to host banquets every few days, yet she occasionally found herself short of funds. Yuan Yihuan's suggestions and astute management ushered in a significant influx of money. It didn't take long for Princess Li Ping to grow used to her daughter handling household finances. Ooh. Observing that her mother was in low spirits, Yuan Yihuan had even arranged a lover for her. Princess Li Ping was a woman with a woman's desires. Her status made remarrying difficult, but there was nothing wrong with taking a paramour. The emperor and empress turned a blind eye to the situation, while Princess Li Ping's reliance on her eldest daughter only increased. Yuan Yihuan never spoke ill of the emperor and empress in front of Princess Li Ping, but she dropped subtle reminders that Princess Li Ping's status was no longer what it had been. A princess was a proud daughter of the heavens, yet this one was unable to control her own fate. Yuan Yihuan knew her mother had always felt resentment toward the empress. It had originated when she was offered in marriage to the Yuan family and became the princess consort, and continued right up to the moment her father had personally exterminated the Yuan clan, destroying her family. The bitterness of many years simmered deep within her heart. Yuan Yihuan saw this resentment for what it was. She nurtured it bit by bit, ensuring it burgeoned in strength. For the 13 floors of Yunhai, there was no collaborator more suitable than Princess Li Ping. She was a woman and the emperor's eldest daughter, so she wouldn't raise his suspicions or alert him. But she was also a member of the Yuan family. She'd borne them 2 daughters that still carried their name. She had a lifelong connection to them, one that could never be severed. The princess served as a bridge, and also as a cover. Through her, they created opportunities to attack and advance, but also defend and retreat. Unbeknownst to Princess Li Ping, she had become a pawn in Yuan Yihuan's hand, at the mercy of her daughter and Xiao Le. By the time she sensed something amiss and wished to turn back, she was horrified to find the path cut off behind her. It was too late. Huan Niang, let's stop this. Princess Li Ping grasped Yuan Yihuan's hands. I'm terrified. I can't go on. Since Mother fell ill every time I enter the palace, I'm deathly afraid of exposing our secrets. Huan Niang, I don't want to be the Empress Dowager again. Can't the 3 of us simply live together in peace? Mother, once the bow is drawn, the arrow must fly. Yuan Yihuan shook her head. What's done cannot be undone. Everything's ready. Tomorrow is the Buddhist ceremony. Xiang will arrange everything. There's nothing you need to do. Just remain quietly in the princess's residence and await good news. The Yuan family's power is gone. Princess Li Ping's voice trembled. They could not regain the throne. Yuan Yihuan smiled. Mother worries too much. Grandfather has already exterminated the Yuan family. There's no son to take the throne. Once third uncle becomes emperor, I'll be granted the title of princess and marry Xiang. He will direct court policies as prince consort. There's no need for you to fret like this. I assure you, the splendor and wealth you've enjoyed will only increase. On hearing the words, third uncle, what little color remained in Princess Li Ping's face drained away, and her hands and feet turned cold. There was truly no turning back. What about Yingniang? When will you bring her back? She's your own little sister. Once this matter is finalized, of course Yingniang will return, Yuan Yihuan said gently. But her words froze Princess Li Ping's heart in her chest. Are you using Yingniang as a hostage to threaten me? She asked hoarsely. Mother, you're doing it again. You're always like this, favoring my little sister over me. Is it because I didn't grow up at your side? Or is it because I'm more capable and you feel the need to protect her? Yuan Yihuan's lips were still curved in a smile, but her eyes had grown frigid. She's my little sister, so how could I harm her? But the crucial moment is upon us. What's wrong with keeping her away from the strife? Her patience had been exhausted. Stepping swiftly forward, she tapped several acupoints on Princess Li Ping's body, and the princess closed her eyes and slumped onto the bed. Yuan Yihuan drew the blankets over her mother. Sleep now, she whispered. When you wake up tomorrow, this will all be over. She raised her hand, ready to seal a few more acupoints to ensure Princess Li Ping didn't awaken too early and spoil their plans. But Princess Li Ping wasn't a martial artist, and she was growing old. Locking more of her acupoints might harm her. Yuan Yihuan hesitated, her face pulled into a tight grimace, as if disgusted at her own indecision. Finally, she turned and left. So, there's still a little bit more to this chapter, but I'm just making an assumption that that is going to come back and bite her in the butt. Just because of how much focus was put into that, just like the fact that it was pointed out means it's going to come back to bite her in the butt. Outside, the snow continued to fall. How many in the capital passed a sleepless night in their beds, tossing and turning. The 17th day of the first month dawned, washing the city with pale light from the east. Get up! Hurry and get up already! Quick! Today's the day! Change and wash up. The emperor will arrive at 5. The monk Kongjing was first to rise in Da Xingshan Temple. He went around rousing his peers, leaving the monks on the communal mattresses, rubbing sleep out of their eyes as they stirred. Outside, the sky had not yet brightened. It was even earlier than the time they usually rose for morning prayers, but no one complained. Everyone knew what day it was. Very soon now, His Majesty the Emperor would come to the National Temple for prayers and blessings, while Master Ling Zhang presided over the ceremony. One young monk in the center of the room slept at a distance from his peers, a cotton blanket crumpled between him and the others as a barrier. Kong Jing shook his head. How fussy this junior was. How was the young man supposed to achieve enlightenment like that? Yet before he could give him a tap, Kong Yun sat up on his own. Kong Jing was delighted. You're finally not sleeping in today, so you can do it when it matters. Hurry up and get ready. Kong Yun nodded and silently pulled on his clothes. Despite his nagging, Kong Jing wasn't truly angry. Kong Yun had recently come down with a cold, leaving his throat sore and his voice hoarse. If not for the fact that they needed everyone they had today, his monastic siblings would have urged him to get more rest. Fortunately, Kong Yun didn't need to speak while serving at the ceremony. If he could get through today, he'd have plenty of time to recuperate. More importantly, Kong Yun was extraordinarily handsome. Whenever he stood near Master Ling Zhang, he looked exactly like one of those jade-faced youths who served the bodhisattvas. The monks all dressed and trickled out of the room one by one. When Kong Yun saw that everyone was gone, he surreptitiously pulled out a jar of moisturizing ointment and applied it to his face. It couldn't be helped. The weather was very dry. It's a face mask. Or a skin face mask thing. Yeah, it's not suspicious at all. I agree, Truffle. Not suspicious at all. Sorry, my ear's itchy. Okay. Ugh. Okay. 2:14:15. Chapter 180. Dawn's light was still faint on the horizon as Yu Qingzi waited for his family to bring over his horse. He adjusted his jade crown and brushed off his clothes, then vaulted into the saddle, ready to head toward the palace gates. His wife, Lady Xiao, came personally to see him off. "Take care, my lord. Have a safe trip." The general nodded and set his heels to his horse's sides. The war between Great Su and the Gok Turks had come to an end just before the new year. He'd returned from the front lines to deliver his report in time to experience the Lantern Festival and had been summoned on short notice to accompany the emperor to the Buddhist ceremony. The emperor kept a small and carefully chosen company today. Only his most trusted ministers were permitted to join him for the ceremony. Nearly all the valued officials who participated in decision-making at the council hall were included. Their presence demonstrated the great importance the emperor placed on this prayer ceremony. After all, there'd been a solar eclipse only the day before. Whether to atone before the heavens or soothe the hearts of the people, the Buddhist ceremony had to showcase the grandeur of this great Su to its subjects. The ministers had gathered, and the time had come. They set off from Zukyu Gate with the emperor in a grand procession. Their destination was Da Xingshan Temple, located in Jingshan Ward. The snow on both sides of the road had been cleared overnight. Downy drifts still piled up on the rooftops, but this didn't impede travel. As the sun rose, the snow began to melt away, perhaps a sign that their troubles would soon fade as well, making way for a new beginning. He Zhang, one of the emperor's personal attendants, glanced up at the sky. He quickly lowered his gaze again, looking straight ahead as he kept pace with the imperial guard. Inwardly, he breathed a silent sigh of relief. His mood had eased considerably. After yesterday's eclipse, he'd been on tetherhooks, and he wasn't the only one. No one at the palace had dared even breathe too loudly. The emperor's face had been like a thundercloud since the start of the year, and the empress had been bedridden in the palace. After the upheaval at the Prince of Qin's residence on the night of the Lantern Festival, the emperor's mood had reached a new low. As an attendant who served the emperor so closely, He Zong naturally wasn't happy either. Court ministers often tried to curry favor with him due to his position, but in front of the emperor, He Zong had to walk on eggshells while still dutifully carrying out his responsibilities as an attendant. The Buddhist ceremony was something that couldn't be put off. They would have proceeded as scheduled even if a blizzard struck. But seeing the snow clear filled him with new hope. Might today go smoothly. No more snow and no more eclipses, Yuzong prayed in his heart. Those around him were all of the same mind. Soldiers had cleared the imperial street for the procession, and the shops on either side were tightly shut. Only the sound of hoofbeats and footsteps accompanied them down the road. There was no conversation or chatter. An occasional bird flew through the blue skies, its crisp calls echoing through the clouds. It had been a long time since Hezong felt this relaxed. Lulled by the sound of the birds, he lost himself in thought, his gaze sweeping over the ministers around him. The general marched in front, clearing the way, and they were followed by civil officials. Even pillars of the nation, such as Yu Qingzi, were among them. It was a reassuring sight. Only one face was conspicuously absent, Feng Xiao's. He'd been embroiled in the trouble at the Prince of Qin's residence, then escaped the Ministry of Justice's prison. No one had seen him since. Having Deputy Chief Feng here with all his martial arts would have been even more of a comfort. Hezong recalled the Emperor's stormy expression when the breakout was reported the previous day. In truth, Hezong also found it hard to believe Feng Xiao was the culprit. But in that case, what was he trying to do? The Emperor favored him immensely. If he wanted a higher rank and greater wealth, he needed only say the word. It made no sense for him to do something as absurd as attack the royal family. Nevertheless, the evidence was compelling. The Crown Prince, the Prince of Jin, and several others had all testified against him. Without a solid explanation, even the Emperor was not able to help him. Yizong's position was special, as he often was in close proximity to the Emperor. Because he was tight-lipped and discreet, the ruling couple trusted him deeply. He knew many secrets that most people, even high-ranking officials, did not. For example, he knew that, some time ago, the chief of the Shuyue Bureau had come before the Emperor and Empress. He had linked several suspicious events to the people around Princess Li Ping and even suggested that the princess herself was involved. At the time, He Zhang had been standing at the entrance to the hall. What he'd overheard had shocked him. He desperately wished he'd been born deaf and blind. He determinedly pretended he didn't know the Shuyue chief had been there at all. But afterward, he noticed the Emperor and Empress put distance between themselves and Princess Li Ping. They no longer sent her gifts as freely as before. When the incident had occurred at the Prince of Qin's residence, He Zhang's thoughts had turned at once to the princess. But Princess Li Ping hadn't been at the Prince of Qin's residence that night. She hadn't attended the banquet or even visited in the days leading up to the attack. With the princess cleared of suspicion, Deputy Chief Fang became the prime suspect. He Zhang would never voice his thoughts, but he had privately considered the matter numerous times. Unfortunately, the more he mulled it over, the more he found the truth shrouded in layers of fog, impossible to clear. If neither Princess Li Ping nor Deputy Chief Fang was the murderer who attacked the banquet, then who could it be? Surely it couldn't be Chief Chu playing a villain to catch one. He suddenly noticed that Chubu Chu was not among the procession today either. Where had he gone? Honestly, things have been going awry since the start of the year. Should they change the name of their ruling era from Kai Huang to something else? The scent of incense grew stronger as they approached their destination, rousing He Zhang from his reverie. It was the rich, warm smell of sandalwood, unique to the temple. Dun, dun, dun. What else do we know that smells of sandalwood? Get one guess. Oh no! I agree, Truffle. He raised his head and saw the swooping eaves of the majestic mountain gates standing before him. Clearing his throat, he called a drawn-out, "Stop!" The imperial procession came to a halt. He Zhang bowed and lifted the tasseled curtain, helping the emperor alight from the palanquin. To be fair, you're not wrong, Esper Lady. He does smell of sandalwood. He does. He very much so does. That is his characteristic incense scent that lingers. The imperial procession came to a halt. He Zhang bowed and lifted the tasseled curtain, helping the emperor alight from the palanquin. The emperor himself had requested this. He wished to walk through the mountain gates alone, without attendants, to demonstrate his sincerity. All the officials dismounted, falling into step behind the emperor. Master Ling Zhang, the temple's abbot, personally came out to greet them. He had been a close friend of the emperor since his days as the Duke of Su. Although the temple's monks were understandably nervous about the emperor's visit, Master Ling Zhang was as calm and composed as ever, an attitude that only deepened the emperor's respect for him. Put a box of sandalwood incense in the box I keep his cosplay in. Nice! I've thought about doing that for some of my other cosplays. But they don't have as many distinct scents. But that's a really good idea. All the officials dismounted, falling into step behind the emperor. Master Lingzang, the temple's abbot, personally came out to greet them. Been a close friend of the emperor since his days as the Duke of Su. Although the temple's monks were understandably nervous about the emperor's visit, Master Lingzang was as calm and composed as ever, an attitude that only deepened the emperor's respect for him. They exchanged a few words, and Master Lingzang led the emperor into the temple. He brought him through to the main Mahavira Hall, while the officials stopped to wait in outer Tianwang Hall. I just wanted to make sure to say that correctly. Your Majesty's mind is clouded, and your emotions are in turmoil. I fear you'll find it difficult to worship with a sincere heart. Only Master Lingzang would dare say such words. The emperor wasn't upset. Instead, he sighed. I know, but I can't seem to settle my heart. I even took some calming medicine before leaving the palace. To untie the bell, one must find the one who tied it, Master Lingzang quietly chanted. The Buddha resides in the heart. Worshipping him serves to cultivate peace of mind. If the obstacles in your Majesty's heart remain, all worship will be meaningless. The emperor was silent for a moment. My heart has too many obstacles. I must resolve them before the Buddha. Master Lingzang didn't say anything further, but his face was filled with compassion. He beckoned the emperor to follow. And yes, cedar does keep the moths away. That's why you would see people put clothes in wooden chests. It wasn't just because sometimes that was the only thing that's available, but also just the cedar keeps moss away. Yizhang pricked up his ears, listening intently to their conversation as he walked behind them. It wasn't that he wished to pry into the emperor's thoughts, but it was his duty to anticipate the emperor's needs. Master Lingzang and the emperor walked in front, while Yizhang and the junior monks trailed behind them. Yizhang's eyes caught on the young monk beside Master Lingzang. He had a handsome face and carried himself with remarkable poise. He appeared to be an exemplary Buddhist. His focus was drawn inward, and not once did he glance in Yizhang's direction. When they arrived outside the main hall, Master Lingzang instructed them to offer incense as a display of their sincerity. Focused on holding his 3 sticks of incense, Yizhang tripped on a protruding stone. Just as he was about to topple, a hand reached out and steadied him. Even the 3 sticks of incense that had slipped from his fingers were snatched from the air and shoved back into his hands as if by magic. It was as though he had never tripped at all. Yizhang's eyes went wide, his heart pounding. He almost thought he'd imagined the entire thing. Falling and hurting himself was a trivial matter, but making a fool of himself before the emperor was a serious offense. If not for the young monk beside him, he'd probably have lost his head. Feng Xiao, you show off, right? Shaken, Yizhang waited until the emperor offered his incense and took the chance to quietly thank the young monk. The monk waved a hand and pointed to his mouth, silent. So this young man was mute. He'd have to pretend to be mute, otherwise he'd stick his own foot in his mouth and totally break character. Yizhang mused that becoming one of the monks who accompanied Master Lingzang was no small feat in itself. Not only did the abbot's attendants have to be beautiful, they must also be skillful and agile. It was a pity the man couldn't speak. He'd never be able to give a sermon as a high monk in the future. He glanced at the young monk, then inserted the incense into the burner and hurried after the emperor. The sound of Buddhist sutras drifted through Da Xingshan Temple. Inside the main hall, the chanting seemed to wrap around them like a wall of shimmering gold, enclosing the temple in its protection. Even if it was only an imaginary barrier, Yizhang grew steadily calmer. He gazed at the emperor, seated cross-legged in the center of the hall. Perhaps he was experiencing a similar sense of relief. Feng Xiao had no idea He Zhang felt so sorry for him. In fact, he hadn't intended to infiltrate Daxing Temple, but he'd only just escaped the Ministry of Justice and desperately needed to wash and change his clothes. Returning to the Jijian Bureau was not an option. Only if he remained in the shadows would he pose a threat to the enemy. He'd been contemplating finding a brothel and pretending he was a wandering gentleman in order to rid himself of the stench when he passed Daxing Temple. The smell of sandalwood and the soft sound of chanting had stopped him in his tracks. In the distance, a young monk happened to be returning to the temple. A brilliant idea bloomed in Feng Xiao's mind. That poor monk. He could never previously have given up his worldly attachments, but things had changed. After marinating in the smell of chamber pots for hours, his nose seemed to be broken. Everything still reeked. He'd need to wash his hair 10 times at least. Psychological scarring was difficult to heal. He mugged a monk for his clothes. That he did, Truffle. That he did. Why not start anew? His neurotic need for cleanliness was the deciding factor. He crept up behind the returning monk, a young man named Kong Yun, and knocked him out cold. After tapping his sleep acupoints, he tossed him under a bridge on the outskirts of the city with some water and dry rations. The unfortunate young man wouldn't be back for several days, and Feng Xiao only needed one. He Zhang's stumble was no accident. Feng Xiao deliberately led him toward the protruding brick. No matter how well one concealed their martial prowess, it was difficult to suppress reflexes. But He Zhang's reaction had been that of an ordinary person. He couldn't be an infiltrator. Feng Xiao promptly turned his attention elsewhere. Throughout the day, he'd wandered all over the temple under various pretexts and seen no suspicious individuals. But it was possible that they were too well hidden for him to find by simply walking around. Feng Er furrowed his brow, then smoothed it, resuming the act of a silent and dutiful monk. The emperor sat on the mat for a long time, but the chanting failed to soothe him. A restless beast seemed to pace anxiously within his chest. And I just realized that is definitely an injustice to innocents and technically an injustice to service workers, because the monk is technically a service worker. So that one is going to do 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45 for injustice to service workers. And injustice to innocents now sits at 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 29. Okay. The war with the Gok Turks had lasted 3 years. The previous dynasty had attempted to secure peace with the Khaganate through marriage, but the Emperor of Su refused to compromise. He opted to steadily grind the Gok Turks down. He sent envoys to sow discord among the tribes while also engaging them in open battle. This combination of soft and hard tactics had ultimately forced Ishbar Khagan to sue for peace. It was an achievement on par with those of Su Shi Huang, first to unify the desperate nations of the land, or the legendary Emperor Wu of Han. The emperor himself was exceedingly pleased. Even if he didn't order it, future history texts would surely chronicle his contributions in vivid detail. Yet this joy had been unexpectedly dampened by a series of setbacks. Someone had sought to catch him off guard with the solar eclipse. This much was true. But while the enemy could bribe Hong Yuan, they couldn't control the heavens. Could it be that he really shouldn't have usurped the Yuans? At last the Buddhist rites came to a close, and the monks lining the walls quietly departed. At the center of the vast Mahavira Hall, only Master Lingzang and the Emperor remained. Even He Zhang had retreated to a corner. Without waiting for the Emperor's orders, he closed the doors, giving them privacy to converse. Master Lingzang and the emperor sat face to face, both silent. A long time passed. Was I too ruthless in eradicating the Yuan family? The emperor seemed to be asking himself as much as Master Ling Zhang. Your Majesty already knows the answer in your heart, said Master Ling Zhang. Why do you ask me? The emperor's voice was hoarse. No dynasty yields to another without bloodshed. What choice did I have? His voice trailed off. Despite his justifications, he couldn't rid himself of his guilt. Master Ling Zhang sighed. Heads are not like chives, Your Majesty. Once you cut them off, they will not grow back. Your Majesty understands this well. Your recent disquiet is due to your own inner demons. However, the new dynasty you've established, one that stabilizes our borders and eases the burdens on the people, has greatly benefited the common folk. Such progress would never have been possible under the previous dynasty. Each year, countless civilians on the border faced slaughter or capture at the hands of the Gokturks. The line between good and evil is not a clear one. You've taken lives, yet you've also done great deeds. We cannot generalize. Your Majesty does what your Majesty must. Remember your guilt over the Yuan family and become merciful. Hundreds of years from now, when all these events are history, the people of the future shall come to their own conclusions. Ain't that the truth? The Emperor's old friend was a monk through and through, and often spoke in abstruse terms that made it hard for ordinary folk to understand him. It was rare for him to offer such candid words of comfort. After days of being repressed, the Emperor's emotions finally surged to the fore. Eyes reddening at the rims, he forced a smile. Truly, you understand me best. Master Ling Zhang's counsel had banished half his worries in one stroke. Allow me to recite a sutra for your Majesty, suggested Master Ling Zhang. The Emperor nodded. I would be much obliged. Master Ling Zhang didn't overthink his choice. He casually recited a passage from the Surangama Sutra. The Emperor didn't need to hear him recite any text in particular. All he needed was inner peace. 1,000 words from a bystander were nothing compared to a single moment of self-enlightenment. Master Ling Zhang recited the sutra, his words like flowing water. His voice was aged, yet it wasn't hoarse, but filled with the tranquility brought about by the slow ebb of time. The fragrance of sandalwood permeated the air as the rhythmic sound of chanting filled the hall. Gradually, the Emperor slipped into a reverie. Scenes of the past flitted before his eyes. His first meeting with Emperor Wu of Shou in his youth, when they'd enjoyed a hearty conversation. Emperor Wu of Shou pointed at Crown Prince Yuan Yun and saying, I have a brilliant son and you have a lovely daughter. Would they not be a perfect match? Emperor Wu of Shou, listening to the words of the soothsayer that had led him to gradually distance himself from Yang Jian and grew suspicious of him. Their peaceful relationship as ruler and subject had devolved into hostility. He'd endured and compromised for many years until Emperor Wu finally passed. Only then did he breathe a sigh of relief. Kindness and enmity, fondness and hate. It was no longer clear with whom each had originated. But the Yuan family had never killed a single member of the Yang clan. On the contrary, it was he who'd exterminated them, root and branch. If Emperor Wu was in the underworld now, could he let go of his grievances with a smile? The Emperor slowly turned to look at the giant statue of the Buddha in front of him, as if hoping to glean some answers from the Bodhisattva's faint and mysterious smile. The Bodhisattva's eyes were lowered, its lips shaped into a soft curve. Suddenly, the curve widened, pulling eerily on its face until its entire expression warped. Its golden gaze swung over to rest upon the Emperor. The Emperor's eyes widened in shock. He froze as if struck by lightning. Quiet laughter drifted into his ears, pitched first high, then low, echoing ominously through the halls. The Emperor's first thought was that someone had intruded on them, but he soon realized that the eerie chuckles came not from any living person, but from the mouths of the 24 celestial statues lining either side of the hall. That would be so fucking creepy. Oh my goodness, I'd be like, nope, I'm out. The Buddha statue's uncanny grin sharpened. The statue's arm swung down too fast for him to evade. The Emperor cried out as a heavy hand clapped him on the shoulder. He collapsed backward. Your Majesty! The Emperor jolted awake. His face was white as a sheet, cold sweat sheening his brow. But there was no demonic Buddha statue, only Master Ling Zhang's worried face looking down at him. Woo! He's starting to hallucinate. That's not good. But that is where we're going to leave it for this week. Again, just a little reminder, Thursday will be the special video. You can find it on the main page of my YouTube. It will happen Thursday at 8 CST, so same time as it would be if it was a live stream. And then I will see you again Tuesday, unless something goes funky, and then it'll just be Wednesday. But have a great week. Be safe, have fun, enjoy the lovely, hopefully lovely weather, and I will see you next time. I'm definitely excited about this and finishing this next week. We've been working on Peerless for so long. But yeah. Thank you. I will definitely have a good week and a fantastic time with my family. Bye-bye. Thank you also everyone who watches later. I appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed. Sorry about all the tech issues. It's crazy. But yeah. See you next week.